Welcome back to Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is your host Mike Walters, along with my co-host Eddie Jones. We're going to get you guys caught up on all the action. We had a big road trip that happened, and a big win last night as well to secure the Pacific Division. We'll also look forward to the playoffs, and we have some player injury news and updates, and we'll get you caught up on everything. And first off, we'll go back to the road trip, Eddie. It started out poorly. The Ducks got blown out in New York 7-2 against the Rangers.
Yeah, and if we could avoid talking about this game, I would. But definitely probably the worst loss of the season. I guess I'll get into it in a little bit, but I wouldn't say it was our worst game of the season. But the score definitely shows as it could be one of our worst games. But it was a game when you're trying to match up against the Rangers, and they've got a lot of speed. And Cam Talbot has been amazing for them lately. And you look at the shots, you outshot them 38 to 29. It's just we can never really get ahead in this game. Kreider scoring early on, and Perry answering the bell. And but then the Rangers getting two more before Perry gets it. And a very eventful 3-2 first period where the Ducks outshot the Rangers 17 to 11. And just could only get two past Talbot. But and then you move into the second period where we've had problems all year, and they get two more, and then obviously getting two more in the third period, which we outshot them 15 to 9. I don't think it was an overall bad effort. Well, I guess not the worst effort that we've had all season. They didn't play well, but the stop by a hot goalie and Cam Talbot, and they just couldn't really match up with the speed that the Rangers have.
Yeah, I think you hit it there, Eddie. The speed of the Rangers is kind of what did us in this game. But, I think there were some unfortunate bounces, too. I mean, two of those first three goals that Anderson, had given up were just deflections or bounces off skates that, ended up putting the puck, in the net or close to the net for easy goals for the Rangers there. I mean, if those bounces don't go, the Ducks come out of that first period actually ahead 2-1. Corey Perry picked up his play like we thought after the game winner against Colorado, so he kept the Ducks in it. But again, the second period it just did us in. We gave up those two goals, and once we got down by 5-2, it just seemed like we couldn't recover, Eddie.
Yeah, and they had a lot of shots, and like you said, the Rangers got a couple lucky goals, but when you score seven, when you get scored on seven times, it's hard to blame it on luck. And just defensively a poor effort, and then running into a hot goalie offensive on the offense side. It's you could have seen this game maybe 7-5, 7-6 if the Ducks got a couple breaks, but in the end you still let in seven goals, and they definitely needed to improve defensively.
Yeah, this one was a tough one to swallow, and then going to the next game, the Ducks go into Columbus, where they actually played better. In this one, they jumped out to the 2-0 lead behind Kessler and Cogliano goals. But the second period, the Ducks, again had that meltdown, giving up three goals, and the Ducks found themselves only down by one late. The empty netter put them over the edge for Columbus, but this one was a tough one, Eddie. I mean, it looked like we had Columbus by the end of the first period.
Yeah, we got out to a good start, and we talked about that in our preview for this game. Bobrovsky's going to be in net, and he's had a great season so far, and he had a great game this game. But usually when you get on top of a team, especially like Columbus, even though they've been playing great as of late, you usually would look to secure the win. Hartnell got that power play goal in late in the first period, but then we go into the second period, and we've seen this all season. We still outshot them, but got scored on three times in the period, and obviously that controversial Johansson goal we'll talk about, in a little bit. But it's the second periods again, and I don't like we've mentioned this like hundreds of times on the podcast where just the second period for some reason we outshot them, get outshot. It doesn't matter. We get scored on two or three times in some of these games, and it's just a mystery. And then a good third period, but we're already behind, and when you're going against a hot goalie like Bobrovsky, stopping 40 shots, it's kind of hard to pull out a win.
Yeah, that second period's been a mystery, Eddie. I remember, talking to Phil and Dan about this and trying to figure out what's going on. I even joked about it. I said, "Hey, let's just replay the national anthem in the beginning of the second period. Just act like it's the first period because it seems like for the Ducks, the first and the third period, mentally they're ready to go and everything's fine, and then the second period's the letdown period. So." I don't know what it is exactly, but they just need to get mentally prepared for the second period the way they do for the other two, and I think that'll help them out. The other big issue too, and you mentioned it, was that goal by Johansson. A lot of people were confused about what happened. A lot of people were, for lack of a better term, pissed off. And this is what happened on that play. The refs at first blew the whistle dead, and they didn't call anything initially. And what happened is when you're watching on the TV, they go pick up the phone and they call Toronto, and you hear him say that Toronto couldn't determine whether or not the puck was over the line. But what we found out afterwards is that they, on the ice, determined that the puck was in the net. And because Toronto couldn't overturn it, that's why the play stood up. So as far as the puck being in the net, I saw different angles. It definitely goes across the net, Eddie. But the issue that they didn't address was Johansson's contact with Gibson.
Yeah, and then if the puck was in the net before the whistle was blown as well. But there was a quote from Gibson in the game and kind of sums it all up. He said he didn't see the replay; it was under his blocker, and he didn't know if it went in. And from what we can see from the replay, it looks like when he makes a save, it rolls off his arm, but he covers it with his blocker, and then Johansson comes crashing into the net and pushes his blocker into the net, and then you can't really see the puck until the play's already dead. It's a tough call. This is probably where you could see a coach's challenge coming in handy for goalie interference, or even just to review the play a little bit, more thoroughly. But I'm sure Toronto looked at it, and even just looking at it from us, and they've got a lot more angles than we do, but just you can't really see the puck after it rolls off Gibson's back, and he kind of swats at it, and it's going towards the net, and then you can't really see it, and if you're gonna believe what Gibson said. He says he has under his blocker, so then you could review the play for goalie interference because you can definitely see Johansson sliding into the net and pushing his blocker.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the Ducks responded well. I mean, they came back and scored right after that. And Bolesky, put us back up ahead. I mean, granted, it would have been 3-1 instead of 3-2. I don't like to blame games, losses because of a call or whatnot. I mean, it didn't help the Ducks in this one, but the Ducks giving up two quick goals, right after Bolesky's goals, really what did the Ducks in this game, Eddie.
Yeah, and you can't help but think maybe that call and that goal Johansson might have rattled Gibson a little bit. We can't tell for sure. Obviously, Bolesky getting that goal was great, but when you concede like not even 30 seconds later, and then another one a minute after that, it just drains the momentum out of everybody. And then even having a strong third period and not being able to score because you get stoned by Bobrovsky, it's hard to take. But they moved on after this game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough loss, and I mean, that didn't help. I think they could have maybe got a point out of it, but it's definitely something that I think, will be maybe looked at a little bit harder next year. We talked about the coach's challenge, especially in regard to goalie interference. So I think this is a definite play that they'll look at. There's another play that comes up in this Boston game too, as well. The Ducks pulled out this one. Anderson went back in net, played extremely well in this game, and the Ducks pulled out the win. They were trailing 2-1. You had Corey Perry get that last second goal in the third period with barely 39 seconds left. And then obviously Getzloff with that rocket in the overtime for the winner. But this was a good all-around win, and the Ducks did such a better job in the second period and defensively as opposed to those first two games, Eddie.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it was a pretty solid effort. You can't fault Anderson for the two goals on the power play. The Bruins got I don't want to say lucky with a lot of their calls in the game, but there's a lot of calls on the other side for the Ducks that weren't called. So the Bruins got both their goals on the power play, and I think the Ducks could have won it a little bit more handily than making us have a heart attack and with Perry scoring with like 40 seconds left, and then Getzlaf getting the OT winner. But we've seen it all this season and last season. They never quit, and they always fight right to the end, and they pull out a win in this game.
Yeah, I mean, this was huge, and it was funny to see the reaction. There was another Twitter account of a Boston fan that has almost as many followers as we do, or I think a little bit more, but they had put out a GIF of the overhead of Perry's goal, and I saw all these people blowing up Twitter, saying it was a BS goal and all this stuff, and I was just cracking up because, as most of you know, Eddie and I we watch the games, or I'm there in person, and also we review all the goals. We go back to NHL.com, we go back on the Ducks website, we check all the goals out, and it was just funny for me to look over this one because we tell you whether or not it's legit or not. And this was a legit goal. I mean, Perry skated around, Rask's pad did a perfect deflection. I don't know why the Boston fans are upset, but it was not goal interference. I mean, you could have done the coach's challenge here and gone for it again, but it was a good goal, Eddie.
Yeah, and I can see why they'd be upset. They're 40 seconds away from grabbing 2 points, and it's big 2 points for them. And there is a little bit of contact with Rask, but Rask is almost out of the blue paint. Perry skates through, lifts his leg over his pad, and his elbow kind of catches Rask's blocker, but not enough to really throw him off. But Rask tries to sell it and doesn't get the call. And I can see why they'd be mad, not really because of the call, but because of the importance of the game. But definitely no goalie interference there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they were more upset at the fact that they almost won the game, and they were just that was the focus of their anger. But this game, the other part that I really didn't like in this game was McQuaid, just going at Bolesky with the spearing in the groin area, and then the cross check to the Adams apple. I don't like to harp on the NHL either, but I was really disappointed that there was no review on that play, Eddie. McQuaid should have been suspended at least a couple games for that cross check.
Well, yeah, first of all, I was surprised there was really no penalty in that game, and then you look at recently Bufflin being suspended 4 games today for his cross check to the back of a Rangers player's neck, and I'm not saying McQuaid's was as bad, but it was still a cross check to the neck area, and if Bufflin's gets reviewed, I don't see how McQuaid doesn't have a chance. I know McQuaid's hit was before Bufflin's, but you still they're almost identical plays in a way, and how it's not even looked at is beyond me.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, it's above your and my pay grade, but hey, that's the way it went. So I was just glad to see the Ducks pull it out, and also Freddie too. He got his mentality back. He said that this is one of the games where he felt back into it. That I joked with him today. I actually saw him today at Honda Center. Joked with him about the FU mentality. He feels like he's back on his game, and we see that translate from this game into the Islander game too, Eddie. Where basically, if it wasn't for a couple bad breaks in that game, Anderson would have had a shutout against the Islanders.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bad breaks for both teams. Raquel, his shot going in off Islanders defender, Wisnowski's shot going in off the prey, and then a couple fluky goals. Even Cizikas' goal late on was fluky too, and it was a kind of scrappy game. The Ducks held out defensively against a pretty good Islanders team. Got a lot of offensive weapons, especially John Tavares, and Anderson looked to have his mojo back, which is great for us going into the playoffs. He's making Gibson. He's making Boudreau and to make decisions on him and Gibson, and it's good to see both guys going into the playoffs.
Oh yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting to see because Anderson played well in these 2 games, and then obviously you had the back-to-back scenario with the Islanders and the Devils. So Gibson went in that game. We'll get to that game in a minute. But it looks like Anderson, is back at number one and in form. And we'll get to it too. He played well in the Edmonton game last night as well. But going forward in the playoffs, we'll talk more about what Bruce needs to do. But to me, it looks like Anderson is going to be the guy, Eddie.
Yeah, just look at the body of work he's had throughout the season. Obviously, going down injured after the net fell on him, and Gibson coming up and playing so well, and Anderson struggling a bit before he came back. And I think if he can continue this into the playoffs, I know we were talking about it yesterday. If he had a strong game against the Oilers, and then if he can play, probably play another game before the end of the season and play well in that one, you would think that he's probably the guy that's going to start. It's a tough decision, but I think you got to go with the guy who's been, your number one for most of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of changed that up in the game against the Devils? You had Gibson come in, then Gibson plays in this game, and he almost has a shutout. Eddie, he only gives up 1 goal in this contest.
Yeah, and it was a game that we expected it to be defensive, and we saw a couple crazy goals with Kessler's goal as well, and it was a pretty identical game in a way to the Islanders game. Just great goaltending from both teams. We knew Schneider was going to be in net for this game, so we saw it was going to be we knew it was going to be a tight game, and Gibson had to be on his on his game, and he was, and it was a great game from him. And Boschman getting his 10th of the season, something we said we hoped would happen, and he ends up getting that, and Kessler getting his 20th of the season too. So it was an overall a good game, another one goal game, which we're not surprised with, but being able to hold out defensively is definitely a good sign for the playoffs.
Yeah, you talk about that one goal that was reviewed was the one that they said it was Kessler's second goal, and then they went back. No, they said it was Boschman's goal. And what happened on that play is Boschman shoots a rocket, which goes off Merrill's shoulder, and it goes in, and that's what the refs ruled originally. And they again went to Toronto like they normally do, and Toronto couldn't determine one way or another. So again, just like in the Columbus game, the call on the ice stood, and this was the right call. It did go off of Merrill's shoulder. It didn't hit Kessler's stick. So it was another good call. Another one that maybe the coach's challenge could have come out. We had a lot of these plays on this road trip with lengthy reviews and whatnot, but it was good to see Boschman get that goal. And the Ducks pulled out another one goal win, as you mentioned. That's their 32nd one goal victory. And 40 attempts, which it's just amazing, Eddie, that we keep pulling out these one goal battles.
Yeah, and to start the season was a little bit scary, and we'd obviously like to see another like 9-1 shellacking of like a Vancouver Canucks team again. That was pretty fun last year, but if they're getting wins and they're being able to pull out wins, this is something we needed in the playoffs, being able to pull out wins against good teams, and we've been able to do it all season, which is going to translate well into the playoffs. And just to mention one guy who's really stepped up since been called up in the last few games is Wagner. Has played a really key role on that fourth line, especially in this game against the Devils. He was throwing hits around like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he took Merrill out and basically helped him on a line change practically. I mean, he pushed him in between the two benches like completely. I mean, I remember everybody was going out of their mind on this hit. I was out of town in Vegas watching the game at one of the bars, and I was jumping out of my seat. I couldn't get the replay at the time. I don't have the advantage of DVR and whatnot when I'm at home, but that was an amazing hit. And for his size, I mean, he's not the biggest player out there, but I mean, man, he can really throw his body around and make some plays, Eddie.
Yeah, and it's nice to see more depth being able to come up and guys being able to fill roles with some guys being out for injury. Obviously, Bolesky being out this game, and Wagner and Jackman already being out. Wagner being able to come and fill that role. Sadly, I don't think we'll be able to see him more once Bolesky and Jackman and Kessler are all back. But it's nice to see him get some ice time and play well.
Yeah, definitely. And we come into that big game against Edmonton on last night. The Ducks obviously we won this game, and we kind of joked about this before. And the Ducks got a blowout win. I mean, Ducks ended up doing everything right in this game, winning 5-1. I mean, they could have won by easily more. They had multiple partial breakaways and breakaways that didn't score, but then on all the other chances we had, we were just firing it in, Eddie. And I mean, I know it's the Oilers, but the Oilers had won 3 in a row. So I mean, I don't say, oh, it's just going to be the Oiler game again. But I mean, man, the Ducks really took it to them last night.
Yeah, and it was one of the I don't want to say it was one of the craziest games. Just so many things happened in this game. Lindholm, I mean, Silverberg getting his first 3-point game in his career. Lindholm continued to dominate the plus minus on the Ducks with a +4. Perry getting his 600th NHL point. Boschman passing Tverdovsky for his second assist and picking up his 11th goal of the season. And Cogdiano on the penalty shot. It was just a crazy game all in all, and a really fun game to watch, and obviously, clinching the Pacific Division for the third time in a row and getting back-to-back 50-win seasons isn't that bad either.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot. I mean, we also swept the Oilers too. I mean, we'd taken them out in 4 games, so that's nothing to sniff about. This is actually the fourth time the Ducks have won the Pacific Division. It's been 3 in a row, and then, of course, the first time was the year the Ducks went all the way, of course, and won everything in 2007. So those are the 4 times we've done that. Dupree had his first goal as a Duck, which was good to see. He got a little bit of a lucky bounce there. It went off the defender and in, but hey, sometimes we need to get a few of those too. So that was good to see. And all around, just that there wasn't really anything the Ducks did wrong in this game. I mean, like we said, maybe didn't score on a couple of those breakaways, but other than that, I mean, this was a dominant performance. They got the Pacific locked down now. The goal is to try and get first in the West. And right now, the way it's looking is it's the magic number's 5, and Eddie and I are talking about this, and I know some people are confused, but it's when it means 5, it's because of the way the regulation and overtime wins factor into this. If the Predators win out and the Ducks win a couple of the next 3 games, they'll end up tied. But because of the tie break, it would go to the Predators. So the Ducks need to get at least 5 points out of these next 6 games if the Predators win all those games, Eddie.
Yeah, because if we went out and they went out, our ROWs are exactly the same. Then I believe it goes down to, if not goals for, then the games we've played against them. I can't remember what the second tiebreaker is. But yeah, if we win our next game, because we play before them on Friday against Colorado, and they play Nashville on Saturday, the number obviously keeps shrinking, and I'm sure if we win that game on Friday and they lose on Saturday against Dallas, I don't want to say it's locked up, but 3 points to go, and we obviously play Arizona, and in our last game, I think we can guarantee a win there. So I think if we win Friday and they lose Saturday, the West is pretty much ours.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about the President's Trophy and all that, and I'm not really going to go into it because I'm not too worried about that. I mean, right now it's still in the Rangers' control. I mean, they've got to lose at least the regulation game, and I think either another regulation game or overtime, something of that combination, where they need to lose a few games for the Ducks to have a chance. So I'm not worried about that because you never know. They may not even get all the way to the Stanley Cup final again like last year. It's not a guarantee. I think for the Ducks, the key is to have home ice all the way through the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, and definitely it's key to get that first spot like we talked about. If you finish in second, you're pretty much you're looking at playing that second wild card team, which could be Minnesota, which is which is not going to be a fun team to play in the first round. They've won 5 in a row, and they're looking to get going with Dubnyk and net, and guys firing like Parise and Vanek. So when you get that first spot, you're looking at a Calgary or Winnipeg. You could look at the Kings, but you've got a better chance of playing a favorable matchup in Calgary or Winnipeg.
Yeah, and you talk about that's going to be interesting, with Bufflin being suspended and Winnipeg kind of losing it a little bit. The Kings are actually in the driver's seat right now if they win their last 6 games, and obviously not saying they will, but if they do, they hold the tiebreak over Winnipeg. If Winnipeg wins their last 5, they'll be tied, but again, the Kings will have those regulation overtime victories. So there's a good chance that I know some people there's disagreements out there. I know some people want the Kings not to make it, and some people want us to play them and redeem ourselves from last year, of course. But it could happen, Eddie. It could be the Ducks against the Kings.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that. I said it after Gio got hurt for Calgary, that Calgary was pretty much done, and look where they are now in third in the Pacific Division. But with Bufflin going down, and he was already down with injury, now getting suspended for 4 games, which is basically brings him in for the last game of the season against Calgary for Winnipeg. And it's a big loss for them. He's one of their better players, and when he came back, even in the game against the Rangers, they looked really good, and he played a good game. And now with him being down in LA, basically controlling their destiny, Winnipeg's gonna have to rely on Oilers and Vancouver, Calgary, and Colorado to get some big wins against the Kings, because if the Kings sneak in that last spot, like you said, we're gonna have to play them. So it's like if the Kings are almost gonna make the playoffs, I'd rather hope they pass Calgary and take that third in the Pacific, and we get Calgary in the first round.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think the Ducks will lose to the Kings this time around. I think we talked about this. Getting Kessler, fixing the center issues and the face-off issues with him has been phenomenal this season. Especially last year, we lost almost 50 more face-offs to the Kings in that series. So I think that's going to be huge. But The thing with playing them in the first round is I don't want to see another 6, 7 game, brutal series where you come out of that and then you're tired for the next round opponent. That's kind of the worrisome point for me there, Eddie, against the Kings.
Yeah, and I think the ideal matchup for me is definitely Winnipeg. I think they're a good team, but I think they've got to rely on a lot of guys to get wins. They've got to rely on Pavlik to play well, and they've got to rely on Bufflin to stay in the lineup, and they've got to get that first line going. If not, they're not going to win games. And I don't want to play Calgary either. They've looked amazing this year with that first line, and obviously Hiller and Ramo playing really good, and then the Kings, obviously, defending Stanley Cup champs. Nobody wants to play them in the first round. So I think an ideal matchup for us is Winnipeg, but a lot of things have to happen in the next 5 games for that to happen.
Yeah, and that's why I've been trying to tell people too. I know a lot of people are out there scoreboard watching, and they're like, "Oh, so and so's winning, and so and so's losing," and I get that, and I mean I know it's exciting. Don't get me wrong, I like watching other hockey, but it's like it just changes every day. So when someone wins a game or loses a game, I try not to get too excited one way or another because these last couple spots, Eddie, they're gonna probably come down to the final game of the season.
Yeah, you see that almost every year. It just kind of magically works out that, well, I guess this is to say thanks to the schedule makers. For you look at LA having to play Calgary and Vancouver, in the two of their last 6 games, where those are going to be big, playoff position deciding matchups. Where if Vancouver and Calgary can beat LA, that puts them out of the playoffs. And you look in Winnipeg's side, how they have to play the Avalanche and the Flames and the Wild and the Canucks, where they're basically playing every team that they're fighting with to get into the playoffs, other than the Kings. So, it's definitely a thanks to the schedule makers for making it exciting, but it's giving everybody here a heart attack trying to hope that the Kings don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's just the way it's going to be for the next 2 weeks. Let's shift a little gears, go back, to the Ducks and the lineup and whatnot. It looks like because I know a lot of people also get frustrated with the lineup changes and whatnot with Boudreaux, but it looks like the lineup's gotten a little bit more solidified, Eddie. On those 3 wins on the road trip, the offensive lines are pretty much the same, except for Blesky. Obviously had that lower body injury and he had to draw out, which brought Fletchman in on Sunday's game against the Devils. But it looks like the top 4 lines are pretty set. I mean, we did see a little bit of change in the Edmonton game just because Kessler and Bolesky were arrested, so that's why Wagner was switched over to the center spot, which brought Eden back in. But it looks like for the most part that the 4 top lines might be the way that they are going into the playoffs. I don't see too much changing here, Eddie.
Yeah, and I could see that too. Other than, like you said, Wagner dropping out for Kessler when he gets back, and then Raquel and Thompson dropping down the lines in center, and then Bolesky probably coming back in for either Fleischman or Edam. But other than those, other than the rolling door with Edam and Fleischman and Bolesky, I think the lineups are pretty much set. You could pretty much say that those first 3 lines are set. You could see Sekac, Getzlav, and Perry playing together, Palmieri, Kessler, and Maroon, and Silfverberg, Raquel, and Cogliano or Fleischman. You could see those guys all playing. I think it just comes down to Edam and Wagner probably dropping out to bring Kessler and Bolesky back in from injury. But yeah, that's a good sign, though. We know Bruno likes to roll the lines, but getting everybody gelled together and know who they're playing with come the playoffs is definitely a big key for the Ducks.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to happen. The defense too, it's changed a little bit. I mean, obviously he's been resting people. I know some people got all freaked out because Fowler sat out a game and Wisniewski sat out a game, and what are we doing? What are we doing? And he's just resting the defensive players. So I think going on that side, we looked at the pairings. Obviously, Lindholm and Boschman have been together for most of the season. They've been one of the best pairings. So you're going to still see them in there. Vatanen and Fowler will still be in there, and I think Dupree is a stepped up. Especially you got that goal last night. I think Dupree is the one that's going to be ahead of Stoner, and Stoner may be, on the outside looking in for that 6th spot. Which I know a lot of people will be upset about that, Eddie.
Yeah, I don't think too many people are gonna be mad about that. I think Dupre has really showed that he wants that sixth spot, and he's really kind of taking control of it. It all depends on who we play. I know Boudreaux likes to play the matchups, but it's not like Dupre is a small guy either. He's pretty much as big as Stoner, so he's a two-way guy, but he plays defense really well. He's a big physical guy, just like Stoner, and he's not going to take the bad penalties. He's going to chip in with the odd goal. I definitely think he's the right guy for that sixth slot over Stoner.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the way it's going to go. I mean, obviously Stoner sat out too with some injury too, and what I've been hearing too is I actually went down to Honda Center today and got some photos with some of the players, and everybody was all smiles. I'll tell you, they're all in a really good mood today. But I also ran into Eric Stevens from the Orange County Register, which was nice to meet with him too. And the word is from him is that it looks like Kessler and Stoner will be back in on Friday, playing in that matchup against Colorado. And I talked to Bolesky, and me and another fan, we joked with him about if he was going to play on Friday or not, and he said that he wasn't going to play, that he may not be back till one of the final two games next week. So that's kind of where we're at with the injury situation. Looks like Kessler Stoner are back in. Jackman's also on the fence too. It looks like he may be coming back next week. I know we had a fan question about Jackman. They asked if he comes in and plays on that fourth line, Eddie, who do you see dropping out? And I think you kind of had a different approach. I think you don't think he'll be in as much, huh?
No, I think it all comes into matchup. I think if he comes back and he's healthy within the last two games, he might get in a game just so he's game ready and ready to go. But arguably, I think it's hard to bench a guy like Bolesky or Fleischman. You want those creative guys up there, and you definitely want to play Bolesky. I don't see Jackman getting a starting role over any of those guys. He'll still be in the roster and ready to go if he needs to jump in for a game, and just the same with the likes of Edom and Wagner will be sent down, but I don't think he jumps in right away unless it's just to get him some game time. I don't think he checks in on that top 12.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it may be tough with him, now with everybody else playing well, and Bolesky basically saying, he's going to be good to go for the playoffs, is what he told me today. So it's going to be a tough go for Jackman. He may squeeze in on one of those games, depending on who the matchup is. Maybe if we do, go against Minnesota or Winnipeg, and one of those games, he needs to have a little bit more size out there. But it's going to be a tough go for him back in the lineup. The other couple issues too that we talked about, the power play is another situation that the Ducks are trying to iron out. A little bit worrisome. I mean, we haven't been doing as well on there, but I think that's something that should get ironed out, Eddie. I mean, it's just a matter of time. I think Wisniewski added in there and Vatanen added in there. You're seeing Wisniewski get plenty of assists. He's bombing some shots at the net there, so. I'm not too worried about it, but I would like to see them pick it up in this next three games.
Yeah, you would really like to see that too because we brought in Wisniewski to remedy that and Vodden's obviously been our guy, and you would like to see Fowler and Boschman and other guys get going, and just our power play percentage being 26 in the league is you look at some of the other teams around there in Florida, Ottawa, Colorado, Buffalo, teams that aren't in the playoffs. To be fair, Minnesota is down there too in 28th. With a 15.7%. So it's not like it's a terrible place to be. Obviously we'd like it to be higher, and that's why we brought in that's why we brought in Wiz. But if they can get it going by the playoffs, it'll definitely be a big key. And same goes for the penalty kill as well.
Yeah, and I think really the only other issue left out there is the starting goalie situation. But I think, we mentioned earlier that Anderson's is going to be the guy. It's also going to be interesting, too, for those of you that don't know, Jaguar actually holds the record for the most wins in a season at 36 wins back in that 06-07 Stanley Cup season. So Freddie sits at 34, and there's three games to go. I'll be curious to see if Bruce puts him into those three games to try and get that record and keep the momentum going on the winning streak heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I could see Gibson starting tomorrow if he wants to keep it going. I'm sure they've talked about it, And a lot of hockey players don't care about the records that much. They just want to get the wins and play who they think is going to get the win and rest the right guys. I don't know if Freddie cares. I'm sure he probably doesn't, and that much where he's gonna want to take starts away from Gibson. But it would be nice to see him get it, even tie it. I could see Gibby starting the next game and then Freddie starting Wednesday, Saturday, just if they're gonna roll with him into the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think that that's not too far off of a possibility. I mean, they're going to play Colorado on Friday. They're pretty much out of it as far as making it to the playoffs. But the last game they fought us tough, and we only won that game in overtime, Eddie. So that this game might be another one of those games where we see another one goal type situation.
Yeah, and we wouldn't really be too surprised if we did. The both games we've played against them have been 3-2. Obviously, the most recent one being in overtime, and Perry grabbing 2 goals in those games, and Raquel picking up 2 points in the one game he played against them. So it's going to be a tough game. They're still a good team. They've got balanced scoring across the board. Landeskog, again, O'Reilly, Duchesne, Tanguay, McKinnon being out, but no, they've still got a pretty good team. And you got to remember where they were last year. They still got that in them. So Varlamov can steal a game, and it's going to be a tough game. And we obviously want to get the win to get closer to that Western Conference title.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their players on their lineup, I mean, obviously McKinnon out, but you got 8 other guys that, they're in double digits in goals and assists. I mean, they are a balanced team. They can roll all those lines and score. So, it's not going to be an easy one. And Varlamov, I mean, obviously, Perry burned him on that breakaway in the overtime, but Varlamov played very well in that game, and he's played, well all season. So. I look to this one to be one that hopefully we pull out by more than a couple goals, but this one may not be decided till probably later in the third period, Eddie.
Yeah, we could see that. You look at the shot totals we've had over the game. We outshot them 73 to 42 in the game. So obviously Varlamov has stood on his head in both of these games. So it'll be key to do that again, get a lot of shots on him, and if we got to win this game by 1 goal, we got to win it by 1 goal. We've seen it a lot this season, and we wouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's the way that it could roll in that game, and then the Ducks are going to have a big break after this. They're going to be off for 4 days until we take on Dallas for fan appreciation night, which we're giving away 2 tickets for that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And then they finish up against Phoenix. So on the next podcast, we'll preview those 2 games. Some of the other news going on, in the league. I went to Las Vegas this past weekend, and it looks like Las Vegas is going to get a team, Eddie. From what I'm hearing, they got the 10,000 tickets, and it looks like they're going to announce within a month or so that they're going to apply for the expansion, deal with the NHL.
Yeah, they still got a little bit ways to go. They've obviously got to start, get an arena finished. But from what I've heard and seen so far, I think Bettman's really behind it, and it's only a matter of time now before Vegas gets a franchise. And that doesn't mean I think it's a good idea. I still don't think it's the best place to put a franchise. I think it's probably gonna do the same thing Arizona did. It took them 2 months to get 10,000, and you could look at any of the other markets that were possible. You look at Winnipeg when they got their franchise back, they sold 13,000 in under 7 minutes, and it's hard to argue. You don't think a team like Quebec City or Seattle or Kansas City would be able to sell it a little bit faster than 2 months. Obviously that's not proven, so there's not much I can say there. But I think it's a big risk with the team going in Las Vegas, but Bettman seems to be driven to get it done, so I think it's only a matter of time before a team pops up in Vegas.
Yeah, which I mean, from my perspective, I mean that it may long term, be difficult to sustain a team. Kind of like you had mentioned the Phoenix now Arizona Coyotes situation. It'll be interesting. I mean, I go out there a couple times a year, so now I'm going to have more reasons to go out there and watch hockey. Just like I go to San Diego a couple times a year, so now I'm going to have more reason to go watch the goals as well. So I'm going to try and cover some more of that action down there as well. And obviously, we have some other writers doing that, which is going to help out. So it should be interesting. I don't know where it's going to end up long term, but if they get a team, then some people asked during this past week too, what happens in an expansion situation, and I think what would happen is there'd probably be 2 teams, Eddie. They'd come out west, balance out the conferences would be part of the process, and then as far as the way the players are selected, it's really up to the league. For those of you that don't remember, back in the '93 expansion draft, which was the Florida Panthers and the Ducks, what happened is they were able to pull players from other teams, and the teams were allowed to protect up to 15 players. They were allowed to protect a goalie, five defensive men, and nine forwards is how it worked out back then. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but that would probably be something similar like that, Eddie, if they do an expansion draft.
Yeah, you would see that. I think they're looking more towards expansion. You've heard from Bettman that they're not looking to move any of their current teams. They like where they are. He likes Phoenix, obviously. He's shown that. They like Florida. They like where all their teams are, and they're just looking to add through expansion. And if that's in the next few years or the next 5 years, we'll have to see. And obviously, they're looking to even it out and add teams to the West. So you'll see Seattle or even Kansas City and other teams get a look out in the Western Conference. But like you said, with the long term concerns for Vegas, I don't think it's just long term either. I think there's a lot of short term concerns for them as well. They've obviously got the 10,000 committed to season tickets, which is big for them. But after that first season, do you see any of them renewing? Do you see a lot of new fans coming in? Are they going to even be able to fill the rest of the seats in the arena? I think there's a lot of short term concerns to think about too for a team in Vegas.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're going to keep watch on, and obviously keep everybody updated as well. Another issue that's come up around the league, Eddie, and we can kind of talk about this one for a little bit, is they're talking about the overtime next year. We briefly talked about this on 4-on-4 and 3-on-3, and now there's a lot of fan discussion about, well, hey, if a team wins in overtime, whether it's 4-on-4 or 3-on-3, it should be an all or nothing type thing where the winner gets 2 points and the loser gets 0 points. What do you think about this, Eddie?
No, I actually like the extra point. I think it adds a little bit more to the importance of games and grinding out and getting it to the overtime. I get where a lot of people are coming from. Some teams have small amounts of overtime wins and their team's only 4 points ahead of some of these playoffs outside of the playoff teams and they've got like six more wins. You would expect those teams to be higher in the standings if all losses counted, but I don't think it affects the game negatively. You look at in all the conferences, and pretty much every year, the eight best teams the eight best teams you think are the eight best teams in the league based on their play make the playoffs. I don't see anybody other than maybe in the West with San Jose and LA being out of the playoffs, but I don't think the extra point in OT is really the reason why they're outside of the playoffs. So I don't see why it harms anybody, and I think it's just fans looking for something they want to change. It's not a big deal to me.
Yeah, and that was another discussion too. With all the playoffs going on, everybody was asking about what's this row? What's row stand for? What's ROW? And that's in place basically to avoid that kind of situation when there's tiebreak. And for those of you that don't know that statistic, ROW stands for regulation and overtime victories or wins. So what happens basically is when two teams have the same amount of points, they don't just look at wins straight up. They actually go and they look to see who won in the 60-minute periods or in the overtime period. They don't give it to shootouts basically for the wins because they don't want teams relying on going to a shootout and I'm going to put out my all stars to win all these shootout victories. So that's kind of another way that the league controls that. And it's not a perfect system, of course, but at least it's a way to fix some of those issues, Eddie.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be come in handy when it is trying to fix overtimes and everything. And one thing that we was kind of announced today was Cogliano has been nominated for the 2014-2015 Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy, which is presented to the NHL player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. And I don't think we're really surprised that he's nominated for this. It's obviously nice to see another Duck nominated for an award. But if anybody you had to pick anybody, pretty much Cogliano's the first guy that comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely, Eddie. I mean, I couldn't think of a better person for them to pick. I mean, as you know, we all give him the nickname Iron Man, and he still holds the current active streak among active players in the NHL right now. And he keeps going up and up that list. I don't know if he'll get all the way to the top of that, but I mean the way he keeps playing and the things that he does, shorthanded and his back checking ability, and you saw the penalty shot, which is a rare thing in the regular season, regulation time. We usually see the shootout breakaway things and whatnot, and he cashed in on that one with a nice couple of dekes on the play there. So, I mean, there's not a guy that I think is more deserving on the Ducks than Andrew Cogliano, Eddie.
Yeah, I know he's dedicated to every game, and obviously, he's ready to go for 600 plus straight games, and it's amazing to see them keep his streak going, and there's not anybody better qualified for this trophy. And another thing that the Ducks put out yesterday, kind of a more funny upbeat note is the harsh tweets that the Ducks put out last night, kind of the same as the late night mean tweets that Jimmy Fallon does, and I mean Jimmy Kimmel does, and it was actually pretty funny. You see a couple guys, Kessler with the last one, which a lot of people were getting on about, but a nice new kind of social media thing we talked about with the Ducks, and putting out something that the fans really enjoyed.
Yeah, that was pretty funny watching that. I can't remember when they put it up during the game, but I remember they had it up there. I think it was maybe right before the intermission, but they had like Bori Perry, and I was like, what? It was just funny to see them read and then see their reactions, and definitely a good thing. The social media night went really well last night. We had one fan that did our contest, and well, we had several fans that did the contest, but we had one that won and got 2 tickets to the game last night. We still have the 2 tickets for Fan Appreciation Night. For that one, if you have been following along, you have to get all the words together for the phrase and send in the phrase to us. The word for tonight is cup, C-U-P. So there's your last word, and put that word with the previous 3 in the last 3 podcasts, and then just email it to us, the phrase that you think it comes out to be, and you can email us at ducksandpucks@usa.com, and we'll keep that open. We'll probably keep it open till about Monday morning, about 9 o'clock or so we get everybody to listen and get this in. I know we did the podcast a little bit later in the week because I was out of town, but we'll get that done for you. And the Ducks are in a good mood, Eddie. I went down there today, met another fan down there. We hung out, had a good time. Everybody's smiling. Everybody, of course, is winning. Boudreaux looked, happy today too, and he was joking around, and everything's going good. So they just got to keep rolling and doing that, and I think we'll be good. The way that it's coming down here in these final games.
Yeah, and if we can continue winning this into the playoffs, I think that's going to be a real big plus if we can, I not say maybe win 7 in a row going to the playoffs, but if we can win 2 of these next 3 games and win that last one against Arizona and just be playing well going into the playoffs is going to be a big boost for our chances no matter who we face.
Exactly. And also one last thing, I know some people asked about the playoffs and when it's going to start. April 15th is when the actual playoffs start. I talked to some of the people at the Ducks. They don't know when the Ducks' first game will actually be. It'll either be the 15th and the 17th, or probably the 16th and the 18th. I haven't gotten the final word, but I know a lot of you asked about that, so I just want to get that out there. And just stay tuned. We'll have another podcast coming up on this Sunday, probably a little bit briefer one, but we'll go over some more things. And we also added the podcast on Stitcher as well now. So we're on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. So you can get us there if you go on there and you look, just search for Ducks and Pucks podcast, and we're on there. Thanks for all your support, and we'll see you in a few days.
The Anaheim Ducks are the Stanley Cup champions.